All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I know we may have some other folks joining us as we get going, so thank you all so much for being here today. I'm Jessica Shade. Currently serve as Curriculum and Assessment Development Faculty at Calbright College, and I will turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Andrea Brewster.
Thank you, Jess. I'm Andrea Brewster. I am also a faculty at Calbright College, and my area of expertise is curriculum and assessment development. So I have the great pleasure of being on a dream team with Jess. We're a team of two, supporting curriculum development and educational assessment, both the planning and the analysis across the college.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. We're really excited to share what we think are some really innovative approaches we've taken to strengthening that industry feedback loop in terms of program development and also assessment design. So today we'll provide you with a little bit of background about Calbright, about some of our unique models for assessment, and then we'll talk about some piloting that we did to really bring more industry perspective into the curriculum development and the assessment development process in order to better prepare our students for those entry-level positions upon completion. So, and then we also really want to invite you into the conversation, right? This is new for us. We were able to pilot some things with our advisory councils and really gain some industry insights, but we also want to hear from you. So if something sparks an idea or something that you want to share or a question that you have, please unmute, please leverage the chat. Definitely do not want this to be just a one-way street for communication. So please feel free to join into the dialogue whenever you can. So a little bit of background about Calbright. So Calbright is the newest community college in the state of California, and we are the first fully online community college. So what I think is really unique about Calbright, and I get very excited about this, is that we were actually founded in 2018 by Governor Brown. And we realized there was an issue in California. There was a huge subset of our population that did not have access to higher education. There's also a tremendous need within our labor market and workforce to fill gaps within our labor market. And we realized that in order to do this, we needed to upskill and reskill adults that had been historically marginalized from traditional paths in higher education. So that was kind of Calbright's birth story, right? Is we came in to fill this need within the community college system and within the labor market system within our state. So some unique things about Calbright. First, we are at no cost to the student. So it is free currently for all of our students to attend Calbright. Not only is there no tuition, no book fees, we use open educational resources whenever we can, but we also provide our students with a Chromebook if they need access to technology. We provide them with a hotspot if they need access to the internet so they can complete their online learning. We also provide wraparound services for our students, and that includes telehealth, mental health supports. Some of our students are facing some really challenging situations. So we also connect them with community partners within their region to help with food insecurity, housing insecurity, items like that. So we really try to support the individual where they are in both their economic and their learning journey as best we can. We also are completely asynchronous online, and we follow a CBE framework. So rather than time in seat, spend this many hours in class or complete this many assignments, it's definitely show us, right? Show us that you have these skills. Show us that you're ready to go out into the field and do this. And once you've shown us that you have these skills, yes, let's get you out the door. Let's get you into that entry level job. And so I really appreciate that we are able to reach some individuals that may be excluded from education because of life circumstances. This could be caregivers. This could be people that are working multiple jobs and don't have a consistent schedule within which they can schedule their college courses. And so it allows our learners a lot of flexibility. They can also do this work at whatever time and location works for them. So if they have 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. available to do their work, that's fine. That works for us. We also have a faculty model where we have both our full-time faculty, but also adjunct faculty that are able to flex those hours a little bit more. So if a student needs support at 8 p.m., support is available to them. To date, we have over 6,000 enrollees. We have awarded over 1,000 certificates, and we are currently represented in 57 out of 58 counties. So if there's anyone out there from Alpine County, we desperately want you to enroll. But we're really excited that we've been able to reach so many learners in the state that don't have access, whether it's time or just location, to reach their career goals. And then, of course, because most of our students are working adults, most of our students are 40 years old. So we're not working with traditional students that have just graduated from high school. Oftentimes, we're working with adult learners that have maybe had a gap in their education or have, gone down one career path and have realized they're ready to change onto a new path. So that kind of helps build a little bit of context with our mission and what we are set up to do in the state of California.
Fantastic. So I would like to highlight at this point how Calbright's assessment board context shapes the educational experience of learners and how it is different from a traditional college model. So learning at Calbright, as just shared, is self-paced. Assessments are based on demonstration of proficiency in every competency or module, if you will, that make up a program. And I'll talk a lot more about what that means later. And then instead of a traditional grading wherein students earn grades based on multiple forms of performance, at Calbright, grading is solely a demonstration of proficiency in the area of the competency and each competency. Also, time to completion varies, and skill mastery and the demonstration of that mastery can be self-paced. So what that in practice means is that we have a lot of hard time partnering with some of our third-party providers because it's not how those tools were built. But we have a lot of opportunity for customization and a lot of opportunities for growth and expansion of how those tools are applied, and that's been really challenging / fun. Let me take you just for a little background into what this our validation focused model looks like. So what you'll see here is that we have traditional program learning outcomes and course learning outcomes. But what's a little bit different from a traditional model is that we also have competencies, and typically about 5 to 10 competencies in a program, sometimes a few more. And each of those competencies are composed of a topic area and a performance indicator that will tell us whether students are proficient in those skills and have demonstrated those skills. And then we break it down one more step into unpacking that competency into typically 2 to 5 specific skills that make up the competency and that we need to see visibly demonstrated fully for us to then infer that the competency has been fully met and the course and program level outcomes.
So thinking about student scaffolding, right? So we have these, if we're thinking about all of these ladders or these rungs on a ladder that students are climbing to reach those program level outcomes, being able to add more detail at the bottom of the ladder, right? Helping students understand these are the specific things we need to see or hear, or that you need to demonstrate through this activity in order to show us that you truly are proficient in this competency. This really also supports our asynchronous model, because if you imagine some of these students, they're contacting their faculty or their professors every single week, and they're setting up those meetings. Other students may never speak to their faculty member verbally. It may just be through communication through Canvas. And so being able to add that granularity to our outcomes has not only helped with supporting that scaffolding for the student learning, but has also helped with that communication to students about what we expect from them in an asynchronous environment. So, and you can also imagine the data gets really fun when we break it down into these granular observable skills as well.
Okay, now let me dig into some of the mechanics of what self-paced learning means at Calbright. Not only are learners proceeding through curriculum at their own speed, but we also have mechanisms for individualized pathing. And what that means is that learners who demonstrate that they already possess a key skill associated with a competency can skip over the formative lessons for that the formative lesson associated with that skill within the competency and go directly either to the other formative lessons, or if they've already demonstrated ahead of time that all of the skills associated with the competency are ones they already possess, learners can go directly to the assessment components of that competency, which are the formative and summative assessments. So in the example that I'm sharing here, students in our non-credit certificate program in data analysis can take what's called a pre-assessment, auto-graded. Depending on their score on that quiz, will be invited to take all of the lessons associated with that first competency, only some of the lessons, or invited to go directly to those summative assessments formative and summative assessments. What I should mention here is that learners can always view the lessons. They can always return to lessons. They can go back and complete those formative lessons if they were overconfident about their ability to be proficient in a particular skill, and they would just like to review and then go back to those assessments. But if they test out at the pre-assessment level, they're not required to go through those lessons before they're invited into those formative and summative assessments to complete those assignments and submit those for evaluation.
And we will get into the summative assessments more as we continue this session and our time together. But one of the reasons you may think, oh, but they already showed you on the pre-assessment that they know this. And that's true, right? They did show us on the pre-assessment, I know this. But the reason we still say, hey, we still want you to do the summative assessment is because all of our summative assessments are project-based or performance-based. So then we can see, can the student actually do what they demonstrated that they know on the auto-graded pre-assessment. And it also creates a nice portfolio piece for them that they can then take and show as they're applying for jobs. So that's one of the reasons we still require that summative assessment, even if they've demonstrated, yes, they know the items on the pre-assessment.
So at this point, I would like to share what a general idea of what our many, many, many assessment rubrics look like at Calbright. At present, we work with a two-level analytic rubrics wherein the competency is spelled out skill by skill, whether a student has demonstrated that skill or has not yet demonstrated that skill according to a specific criterion for that skill. And then instructors use that demonstrated, not yet demonstrated rubric to evaluate student performance on those formative and summative assessments that we've just talked about and make that determination. And if a learner has not yet demonstrated a competency, they will be given formative feedback from the instructor about areas to re-engage within the course, lessons. They may also be invited, depending on the needs of the individual learner, to receive additional supports, live feedback, tutoring, in some cases, some success counseling to support that learner in their capacity to resubmit that assessment and successfully demonstrate the competency and the skills within that competency as it's been defined.
And so you can imagine when a student engages a summative assessment, all of the observable skills associated with that competency then show up as indicators on their rubric. And if we think about our asynchronous model, because each of those observable skills is linked to a corresponding formative assessment lesson and assessment, this also allows faculty to redirect students in an asynchronous environment. And the reason we use not yet is because we want to engender that growth mindset. So rather than saying, yes, you have it or no, you don't, it's you don't have it yet, please go back and show us after you've had some more practice. And this formatting of this rubric was developed in collaboration with Volta Consulting, one of the founding partners of CBEM. So we really wanted something that was grounded in the research for competency-based education.
Now, given this institutional context, as we've just ever so briefly put it forward to you all, and the skills-centered assessment focus, I'd like to reiterate what Jess noted earlier about Calbright's attention to workforce alignment and preparing learners for success at entry-level positions in industries carefully aligned with Calbright's programs. So our current practice is to start with a labor market analysis specific to California, specific to California's regions, and let that guide us in our decision making about what programs to develop. Using Lightcast, US Department of Labor, and other data sources, we're studying the skills that employers are seeking. We are looking at job categories that have projected growth specifically within the state, specifically a multi-region. And we're also looking at industries that require minimal educational prerequisites prior to getting that entry-level position. Oh, and then, sorry, fourth and probably most important dimension, industries that offer a living wage in California. We also rely on, as a next step in that decision-making process about where to build and how to build, the insights and guidance of our industry-specific advisory councils. These advisory councils are composed of industry leaders who have been selected for their particular area of expertise to guide and curate how we build programs. And we presently have one of these advisory councils in business, one in IT, and one in healthcare. We also carefully map our programs at the time that we build them to other industry relevant certificates, exams, and other credentials to make sure what we're offering as an institution is consonant with relevant stackable credentials. And we also, have numerous agreements with some of those exams and credentials to pay for student to take those exams and next level certificates to help them get to be best poised to get their foot in the door at that entry level position.
So if we pause for a moment and think about what does industry participation in assessment currently look like? So when we think about what did industry participation at Calbright used to look like prior to our piloting of how can we expand this industry partnership? How can we strengthen this alignment? We had a survey. And we would send a survey out. And then we had a couple of meetings, a couple times a year where we would get some feedback for industry trends. So that's kind of where we were at when we started this process. So I just want to give you a moment to think about, what does industry participation and assessment look like at your institution currently? And if anyone has some awesome ideas or some challenges to share, please come off mute because we know this can also be a tremendous challenge to build those partnerships. And you're also welcome to leverage the chat as well. And if you're like,
Hi.
please go ahead.
I was just going to say, so how this kind of shows up for me. So I'm in institutional research and I support largely the program review processes for our areas. And we do an alumni survey And in that survey, we then ask them for employer information so that we can do an employer survey. It is by no means without its flaws. It's like pros and cons challenges. I end up using that information combined with our advice, like the contact information for our those that sit on our advisory committees, to send out an employer survey. And so it's been helpful to get some of that, but we're still working on building out our like workforce development area. So that's kind of the like what we have right now, but we're trying to work with Salesforce to get a more robust kind of contact system in place for all of our industry partners that we work with. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. And when you said alumni survey, I was like, oh, I know how hard that can be. So that is a lot of work. But I love the idea of saying, where are you actually working and reaching out to those employers.
Jess, we have a lot of comments in the chat. I'm going to try to summarize a few.
Yeah.
They're so interesting. So one of our participants says that at their institution, the closest thing that they can think of is for programmatic assessment would be internship placements in select fields and then getting supervisor feedback um, uh, in for learners in those placements. And we also do that. That's not the focus of our talk today, but I think that's uh, definitely something that might be broader than just and most institutions, I would imagine, solicit that kind of feedback from those supervisors.
But what a great layer to add
Yeah.
in to industry relevance, right? Because if they're
Yeah.
not ready in that internship, it's like, ooh, here's a great opportunity for us to bump up those skills before we actually send them out into the workforce.
Another individual mentioned that it's occurring in pockets in certain programs, right? It might not be in every program, but at that institution, they're leveraging community advisory boards
I love
with
that.
the hopes for expanding into more programs.
Thank you all so much for sharing, and thank you also for validating. This is challenging. It is hard to do at scale across an institution. And so thank you for sharing those ideas. Definitely want to borrow some of those and see where we can layer them in as well. And so thinking about, some of the journeys that we've had, and we said, okay, what we're getting is close, but not quite enough, right? Our students need a little bit more, especially as the job market has constricted over the past few months, and thinking about entry level positions and the impact that emerging technologies has had on the availability of those entry level positions. And so, as we mentioned before, we always start with that labor market analysis, and so much of that is coming from our founding legislation, is coming from our mission, right? We exist to upskill and reskill the workforce. And so we need to make sure that there is truly a need within that area. We also have those discipline-specific advisory council meetings that take place on a biannual cadence. Those are occurring, of course, also part of compliance for most accreditors. And so we do keep those annual council meetings going. But we realized we needed a little bit more than just a few touch points. So we had the survey that we were sending out to our advisory council members as part of our course development. We would attach our course outline of record. We would send the survey with some questions. And oftentimes we would get back, looks good. But we knew this needed some work because we knew they weren't perfect. And so we were able to really step back and take a look at those questions and rephrase them to speak, one, to the specific audience, right? Because the way that we phrase something to the tech industry is slightly different than the way we phrase something to the healthcare industry. And so really being sure that we were speaking to that discipline's language. Then we worked on reworking our questions to ensure that our questions were not just asking, does it look good or not, right? But was really soliciting that specific feedback in terms or in perspective with the outcomes. And so that helped our advisory council give us more specific feedback that really helped us take a look at those outcomes and those competencies. And then what was wonderful is we layered in a focus group. So the focus group allowed us to have synchronous conversations with industry leaders, and having them all in a focus group also allowed them to bounce ideas off of each other. It was a lot of note taking, but we had tremendous conversations that took place during that focus group that we were then able to take back to the faculty member that was developing the course, and engage in a conversation before the core went to curriculum committee, so that we could make sure that we did have those that feedback integrated into the core. Of course, we still partnered that with the survey because not everyone was able to attend the focus group. So that allowed us to pull some of that survey feedback back in as well. Then we said, let's take it a step further. Let's engage with our advisory council in an assessment validation process. And Dr. Brewster will speak to that in a moment. And then we also have our 3-year program review. So we can see that we took advisory council from this twice a year and asynchronous feedback and created a flow where the advisory council, the industry, is informing from the beginning to the review. So we have a much tighter alignment with their current needs.
Exactly right. So we had if you think of it as bookending the curriculum development process, the front book, we were pretty confident, especially with the integration of those really rich and informative focus group sessions that just mentioned, that we had good guidance on what those course outlines of record were, and then those core outlines inform how we move forward into actually developing out a program. And at Calbright, we have a master course model. So Jess and I are actually sitting in the course development meetings that tend to take place over about 3 or 4 months, where we intensively work with a faculty member or other designated subject matter expert to build out every tiny piece of an entire program and the courses that compose that program. Jess, will you move us to the next slide? So, but the other book on that bookend, after we've actually started to build out curriculum, is where we wanted to increase our touch point and increase the engagement of our advisory council members, and reassure ourselves that industry alignment is we're extending that beyond course outlines to the development phase of the curriculum for a program. And so we piloted this additional step in fall 2025, wherein mid-program development in a revised iteration of our CRM platform administration non-credit certificate program, we pulled some of the ink barely dry assessments that we had just drafted for some of the competencies in that program, the accompanying rubrics that we had built for those assessments, and then described in great detail the how we intended those assessments that the students submitted in those competencies to be portfolio pieces, to be professional products that then they can use as they are in job interviews, as they are describing the skills that they have developed through completing that certificate, that they can leverage those in professional contexts. And we asked our advisory council members to scrutinize those, to give us feedback on, one, whether the hypothetical scenarios we had built into those assessments were realistic, how frequently those kind of scenarios our learners would come across those in an entry-level position. And this reframe with our industry partners became one in which they became our assessment collaborators. And that was a very different relationship. We were bringing to bear our expertise on how to, all the good practices we know about building high quality curriculum in online asynchronous CBE frameworks, educating our industry partners within that advisory council. And then our advisory council members were giving us reality checks. Did have the scenarios that we built, are they going to help our learners in professional contexts? Are they, like I said before, things that a learner would encounter on the job and actually have to do? And if not, what edits can we make at this phase before we launch that revised version of the program to make the program as job relevant, as industry relevant as possible? And we hope help those learners really be successful in their first couple of months in a new position or a new employer. And so the results were fascinating. So, and one thing I can tell you is that our I was really proud and pleased at all of the effort being done by other individuals at our institution to put the right people on those advisory councils who really do have decades of expertise in a given industry. In the example we're sharing here, CRM platform administration, for the time and care those individuals took to evaluate our rough drafts of assessments and rubrics and appropriate scenarios for our learners. And the meeting of the minds in that assessment collaboration process, where we actually took a very deep dive in live conversation with those individuals about what they like that we did and what we might do differently, not in a in a very welcoming way. We wanted everything negative they had to say because there was still time to improve the curriculum before it live launches for students. And one drawback or outcome that wasn't entirely positive is that the advisory council members are leaders in their industries and so they had a hard time coming down from the 30,000-foot view to remembering back to what entry level looks like. That's something we never would have thought about if we had not asked those assessment questions rooted in actual artifacts. And the other thing is that they had so much to say conceptually about where we're going, where the industry is going, and all of those things we need to know to keep our program current. But there was a little bit of a disconnect when it came to, like I said, entry level, on the job tasks, and coming down from being on the vanguard of reimagining what CRM platform administration is to what your workday looks like as a new employee on the job starting out in this field. And one of the conclusions that we drew from that is that perhaps our another source of data for us could be our Calbright alumni that have just gone through the current CRM platform administration program. Like I said, we've got a current one in that's presently being offered. We're also at the same time concurrently revising the program and anticipate launching that later this year. But our current learners in the current program will soon be our alumni. They will soon be upskilling and reskilling, like we like to say at Calbright, in their application of those certificates in the workforce. And they also might provide a really rich source of data for us about what entry level looks like. And then we would like to triangulate what we're getting from our own research, what we're getting from advisory councils and those deep dives into curriculum, and also add that third piece, and that's our aspiration for 2026.
So, and I'm just so excited about this because I think, so often we ask the managers, what do you need to see in your employees? And I do see that tremendous value in asking the employee, what's something you wish you knew last month when you started this job? So I'm really excited to see the level of detail that we can get when we bring in that layer of feedback as well. So when we think about our curriculum alignment and our industry alignment, where do we go from here? And so continuing to evolve those partnerships for faculty and industry, and even just expanding our engagement with our advisory councils has really changed the way that we're interacting with them. And I think you can imagine we're all in a remote environment right now, right? An email feels so different than a live session. And a live session where everyone's talking feels very different than a presentation. And so just the fact that we are interacting in these synchronous sessions with our advisory council, and we're inviting them to collaborate with us as collaborators in developing a program for our students, but their future employees. And so not only does this help us better our programs, prepare our students, but it also invites the industry into the education space. And that again strengthens that partnership. And so again, when someone is applying to your industry and you've seen a survey come from their school versus those applying to your industry and you've had a hand in developing the assessments to prepare this student, a very different relationship. And so just even that partnership and that name recognition can be of value to not only our institution, but to our alumni as well. And then, of course, continuing to look to our alumni for more feedback on how well we did. And we face very similar challenges to every other institution with that alumni data, right? Making sure that we get those responses is challenging. Identifying the best appropriate time to get the most number of responses is challenging. And so definitely something that we want to continue to improve and getting more rich feedback from our alumni.
And while it isn't the focus of this conversation today, I want to add at our institution, we are also, we have career counseling. We have internships and micro internships available to learners so that they can have on-the-job practice while they're concurrently doing many of our programs. And we also have a durable skills or that learners can stack onto these programs where they badge and micro-credential in those that they can do concurrently and to round out their employment opportunities as they grow in a learner in the particular focus area of the program. So we're trying to wrap around supports to get learners employed or better employed. Many of them already are employed. It's just not serving them and their family.
And like Dr. Brewster said, this is not all we do for industry partnerships. We also have a strong partnership with Ripen to offer internship experience or job experience for our students. So if you're interested in learning more about that, there is a session on that this afternoon. Dr. Shannon McCarty, our Vice President of Learning and Instruction, is co-presenting with Ripen, so you can hear more about that partnership as well. So really trying to strengthen that connection on both the experience side for our students and the curriculum side as we're developing, so that we really do, we want our students to feel prepared, right? We want them to go out into the industry, get seated in that desk or at that position, wherever it may be, and feel success on that first day, feel success those first few months and say, yeah, I am ready. I was prepared for this. And then hopefully continue their learning journey as well. I'm a lifelong learner, so I always hope that they will continue and come back for more certificates as well.
Jess, we have a question coming forward in the chat that it might be nice to pause for at this moment. One of our participants asks if there were incentives for faculty to engage in what we've described as an intensive design process. And imagining, I think maybe behind that question was the idea that that might be challenging in getting that level of commitment across faculty or in others institutions.
Absolutely. I can. So I guess because it's our model, we have strong faculty engagement with it. We usually have the opposite problem. We have very passionate faculty that really want to be involved, and oftentimes we have to say, oh, we don't have enough room for everyone to be involved. So we're very, very fortunate that we have faculty that have the ability to and the passion to engage in this work. But it is a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It is a lot of commitment. And so I can see how if it's not your institute's framework, that it could be challenging. Not to get faculty. I think most faculty would be excited to engage in this work, but to ensure that their workload and their time is available to engage in this type of work. So we I'm working on a program right now, and the faculty member is swamped. He has several leadership roles. He has quite a bit on his agenda, and so we've been working mostly asynchronously. And so even though he may not be able to be at the focus group meeting, he will still receive the notes. He'll still receive the recording. He'll still receive that information, and he and I will have a follow-up meeting so I can loop him into that feedback. So we do try to be responsive to where the faculty are. And I think that is another unique thing that we have at Calbright, is that it's not just one faculty working on their course independently. We have a very strong collaboration. So when we're working on a program, we have at least 3 or 4 faculty that are working on that program collaboratively from different roles, right? One might be it might be their discipline. They may be serving as a subject matter expert. Dr. Brewster, I would be serving as curriculum and assessment developments. And we also have faculty instructional designers. So it is a team effort. And honestly, there's no way you could do it without a team. It does need to be a group of people working towards it. Especially on a 3 to 4 month timeline, right? If you were going to do this solo, I think it's still doable, but you would definitely have to extend your timeline.
And then, Carol, just to reiterate what we shared earlier in the presentation, we do have a masterclass model. So we have a lead faculty working in this intensive design team process. And then that template is shared with other faculty teaching in the program for feedback. And then once the program is launched, they're all working from that master class. There's also a note in the chat about this being maybe not applicable, or that level of buy-in might not be as readily available from some disciplines like humanities. But I would like to jump in here and say, but that's not what we're doing. We're building out programs that are vocationally aligned. And as we mentioned at the top of the meeting, those labor market analyses are driving what programs get developed, when programs get revised, and then no program once launched and live is static. We continue to check on its relevance, on the evolution of that industry. It's not a traditional liberal arts undergraduate experience. It is, how do we get our learners employed as robustly and as quickly as possible, and how can we curate our offering of programs to best match where California's labor market is right now.
Right. Any other questions or comments? I think I saw a couple people come off mute.
Hey, Andrea, if you don't mind, Jessica, hello. I have a question. I just, I'm kind of like jumping around, making sure that everybody's happy in their breakout rooms. The question that came up was the program learning outcomes alignment. And the presenter explained it very, very well. I think very much in line with what you were just saying, that to make ourselves nimble, responsive to what it is that we're marketplace requires, is that we actually reach out to those organizations that feed, that discuss, that are constantly focused on what it is that we are teaching. And when you think about it, pretty much any discipline that's out there, right? There's the geographers of this planet, and there's physicists, obviously, and there's English teachers associations and whatnot. And all those groups will be so happy to provide with their understanding of the standard or content and skills, competencies, what it is that students need to have at every level. If you could please elaborate perhaps on that idea, because I see this clearly um, articulated link between what it is that's happening in the classroom and what it is that's going to be expected of the graduates once they leave our institutions.
Absolutely. I'm happy to jump in and start, or Dr. Brewster, did you want to? So,
Go ahead.
I mean, I think number one, we start with our labor market analysis, and we have an amazing workforce development team. This is not something that I do, right? We put a request out and say, hey, we need this labor market analysis, and that labor market analysis also tags skills. And so we do leverage Lightcast. We also leverage ONET, but we really start with those skills at the program, and then part of that labor market analysis is also looking at job postings. What jobs are available? What are those job postings asking for? And so we're able to really do a survey of, what does the industry say they need? What are the job postings asking for? And where do our students need to be at the very end of this program when they complete their certificate? What skills do they need to have? And from there, we're able to identify some I'd say a first draft of program level outcomes. But we don't stop there. Then we say, okay, what certificates are offered in this industry? For example, I'm currently supporting an information technology support program, and CompTIA is a national certifier that is recognized industry-wide. So we say, okay, let's take a look at their exams. What are the outcomes, or in CompTIA, they say domains and subdomains, that students are expected to demonstrate on that certification exam? Then we also work with our open education resource librarian to identify other competing certificates, other resources, specifically OER textbooks, and we take a look at their outcomes. What are their outcomes? And from there, we're able to really draw on a rich pool of industry-aligned outcomes to start drafting our program outcomes from. And from there, we work backwards. In order for students to reach these program outcomes, what are the course outcomes that they need? In order for our students to reach these course outcomes, what are the competencies that we need to be sure that students demonstrate before they exit this course? And then a step further back. In order to demonstrate this competency, what are the skills? What do we need to observe? And that's where our observable skills comes from. What do we need to observe these students doing to know that they can do this competency? And so while I think the program level outcomes are key, right? That is definitely what we want our students to walk away from this program with. But I also want to really break it down to that granular level of observable skills, because I'm working with non-traditional students in a brand new innovative model. And so getting down to that granular level, especially for asynchronous, I think is really key. I also really love objectives. My sister is a high school math teacher, and every time I talk to her on the phone, we have a conversation about objectives, and she threatens to hang up the phone on me. So I just really love outcomes and objectives too. So maybe I just have too much fun with it.
Jarek, does that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Again, this is an ongoing discussion. I'm really glad that the OER materials have been mentioned, because that's, again, as we develop them, as we work on them, are we making sure that this is what the industry demands? There really, this need for the assignment or for the alignment is quite obvious. So thank you very much for addressing this in such great depth. There's a question in the chat from Laura.
So, Jess, Laura asks, are higher education and or marketplaces asking for shorter semesters? For instance, do 8-week or 10-week courses gets considered when creating what the industry says they need? Just wondering, as there seems to be a trend towards shorter semesters to quarters or even shorter course designs. And I might jump in here and say, we our target population is the 6.8 million or so adult Californians that are underserved for lots of reasons, whether for some reason they lack easy access to uh, a similar experience at a local community college. And they need to, for us, they need to move as fast as possible into better employment. And so with our particular model, it's self-paced. And so we might have a learner start today. We probably do have some learners starting today. And one may finish in 12 weeks, another might finish in 6 months, and others might finish in a year. We produce some averages for our learners of what we think it will take them if they are working 10 hours a week on the curriculum. So they have some sense of a typical trajectory, but each individual learner goes at their own pace for lots of reasons. And then for our learners in particular, who are, like Jess said, adult learners, many of them over 40, life gets in the way in lots of ways. And the 10 hours a week they imagined was going to work for them when they started their certificate might not be realistic, and their timeline and trajectory changes. So for us, that's totally fine as long as they're making some progress. They continue to be active students. And we have lots of touch points and ways that we check in with those learners to help them circumnavigate whatever obstacle is coming at them and getting in the way of their progress in a program. But we get them through as quickly as each individual learner is able to get through. And I also want to reference back to that individualized pathing impacts a learner's speed as well. If a learner is coming in, Jess, you mentioned the CompTIA certificate, and you mentioned an IT support program. Let's say they already work in that industry, but they don't have the exam completed or that right certification. They may already bring a lot of the skills that get covered within those competencies. Super, great. Move right to the assessments, demonstrate that you've got it, skip over lessons. That's fine with us. We are looking at where the learning that they've achieved and demonstrated, and each path towards that demonstration is just going to look a little bit different. Having said that, we also have learners in our programs who have never who know how to turn on their computer, but they've never encountered that topic, and the lessons are built for them as well.
And Laura, I do think you're onto something, right? It's I think it's that flexibility, right? In that we have an amazing traditional higher ed model that worked for some of us. It worked great for me. I loved semesters. I loved having the breaks and the holidays and all of that. It worked for my life in my 20-year-old self, right? Would not work today. So I think being able to offer traditional programs, able to offer 8-week programs, being able to offer competency-based education programs that are not time-bound. This is what it's going to take for higher ed to truly meet our learners wherever they are. Because we know that this one model, one size fits all, never fits everyone. And so being able to offer those choices for learners, I think, is really key.
So Jess, we have a couple minutes left. Would you share our contact info?
Yeah.
I just want to,
Yes.
It was such a great conversation. I would
I know,
love
it's so
to keep
great.
talking to both.
Yes, let me
If
pull the
anyone
slide
has
deck back up.
specific questions or questions we didn't cover today.
And let me just find the slide deck. It's hiding in my background here somewhere. Apologies, it got lost in full screen when I got excited about objectives. And now my computer's freezing, so maybe I can't share it.
I think I can do it.
I'm trying to get it unfrozen here. apologies. I even did the Zoom update and it's still frozen. Thank you.
So by way of wrapping it up, I want to thank everyone for so much engagement today, for all of the great questions, for listening to us rhapsodize about a model we're very excited about, but may not be a fit at every institution. I hope one takeaway that you can bring back to your institution is that in the ways that it is plausible and realistic for your programs and your faculty, we strongly encourage some assessment collaboration with industry. It has increased the quality and our confidence that our programs are getting our learners where they need to go employment-wise, and I anticipate that those additional insights will do the same for you at your institutions.
Thank you all so much for joining today. And then just one final note, this took time and we started with one program. And so if you're not sure where to start slow, start small, and really excited to hear about your learnings as well. Please feel free to reach out at any time. We are always happy to talk industry engagement and also outcomes.
Yes, we'd love to chat with anybody who has additional questions or would just like to talk about CBE. Right. Thank you for everybody.